And what I notice is that the freedom from people are always relating their motivation to something they're trying to get away from. Is there anything that just motivates you from a positive creative standpoint, or is it always going to be the repair of some sort of pain? You can't, on the one hand, declare yourself as unique, okay, and then complain about how other people aren't like you.
All right, this is a really fun episode because Dan and I create the top 10 capabilities and mindsets of a successful entrepreneur. And full disclosure, right up front, we didn't know what they'd be when we started this, so we kind of made them up. But I think you're going to be impressed and really enjoy this episode. Dan, any big takeaways?
No, you never know what's going to come out of our minds.
That's what being a good entrepreneur is all about.
Out of our mouths. So.
Well, I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Dan and I certainly enjoyed making it. So check this one out. All right, Dan. So today we're talking about what the top 10 capabilities every person, every entrepreneur should have or develop. And maybe to frame this even deeper is after coaching for 40 years, seeing a lot of successful members of Strategic Coach, also evolving and developing all the tools that you have, got this huge library. There are definitely certain capabilities that get founders further and faster. And I'd like to explore what the top 10 might be. And we may end up going super deep on just one of them, but I'd like to just go through and let's figure out what that list may happen to be. So what do you have to say? Yeah,
I think that I've given, quite a bit of thought to people who are consistently good and consistently getting better, which I would, describe as someone who's going to be really successful as an entrepreneur. I think the big thing is they kind of realize that being an entrepreneur is a lifetime sentence, and they never give once they've made the decision to be an entrepreneur, which in many cases happens very young. It's early teens and even late single digits is not unusual that someone is already more or less training as an entrepreneur by being out in the marketplace selling something at age 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. I think it's just the understanding that that entrepreneurism is going to be their life. So they're never conflicted by that there might be some alternative that they could have chosen, an alternative way of living their life. I think they're pretty clear about it right from the beginning, that it's going to be them out in facing the marketplace alone and creating value to differentiate themselves.
Okay. So when I take on the role of the simplifier here, I think what I hear is it's clarity, identity clarity. And I can definitely relate to that. And I talk to so many entrepreneurs, and that is certainly one that they all have in common, which is, what you are, you're an alien. And you can't imagine not being one. Mm-hmm. And the best are those who feel like they're born that way, versus an evolution into. That's been my experience anyway. Might go on a limb saying that, but then the other one about creating value, that makes a ton of sense. So what else shows up for you?
I think I would say that from my experience, and this is just, who I know, and it's in the 20,000s. So it's been a lot over quite a long period, that they understand that becoming an entrepreneur for the sake of freedom from just kind of gets you going, but very, very quickly, what you're looking for is freedom to. I used to have a phrase which really worked for the biblically inclined. And I said, the skills that get you out of Egypt aren't the ones that get you into the promised land. And I find a lot of entrepreneurs, and you see this oftentimes, of what I would call association entrepreneurs who their main activity as an entrepreneur is belonging to an association of entrepreneurs. And it's talking about being an entrepreneur and discussing how different it is to be an entrepreneur from everyone else. But they actually, really aren't out there differentiating themselves as an entrepreneur. And what I notice is that the freedom from people are always relating their motivation to something they're trying to get away from. And my feeling is the most successful entrepreneurs are always increasing their focus on something they're trying to get to. It's a way of operating. It's a way of living their life that keeps getting better over time. And each year is a chance to make greater progress towards something, not an escaping from something.
That's good. I really like that a lot. So, freedom to mindset, and the difference is the freedom from or avoidance-based freedom to are focused on, really, as to use Dan Sullivan language, a positive moving future. And always making progress. And that seems to lead to always seeking for additional opportunities that are going to get you there, more who's, greater network, greater capabilities and skills to make that happen. So I want to go down a little bit deeper. How about just bridging that consciousness? So when you have someone's their eyes light up and their brain turns on when they've realized they have the power to be in a freedom to versus a freedom from mindset, or do you think that they're just that way?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I only have access to one entrepreneur, actually, directly. And so I'm surmising what goes through the minds of other people. And, and I bring it up in conversation so you get some, you get some agreement on some of these things. But I find at a certain point, it can't be about early childhood trauma, being an entrepreneur. And, there's conferences, and we know which conferences they are without having to talk about them, where it's a steady agenda of people just saying how awful their childhood was. And and I said, well, that may be true, but one, it's not very interesting topic for other people. And the other thing is there anything that just motivates you from a positive creative standpoint, or is it always going to be the repair of some sort of pain? This is a third topic. You can't, on the one hand, declare yourself as unique, okay, and then complain about how other people aren't like you.
Well, that's good.
I mean, you got to choose one or the other. So, the whole, position that you're unique means that you've given up comparison.
And do you think giving up comparison is would be number 4 then, if we went from clarity of identity?
I think it's healthy, and it's related to the gap and the gain. That I think people in the gap are largely comparing themselves to things outside themselves. They're comparing to other people's performance, other people's standards, other people's success, other people's results. And at a certain point, I think your freedom to really, really grow really comes from being very, very clear about measurements of your own past success and how you surpass what you've done, And my sense is that if you're a bright person and you're an observant person and you're a responsive person, every quarter you can be achieving new gains that surpass what you've done before. And my feeling is that that's where happiness as an entrepreneur, I think it's human happiness lies in measuring backwards, but I think especially for entrepreneurs, because oftentimes you're in uncharted territory where there are no measurements. You're mapping out new territory, so how could there be standards for whether you're doing a good job or not, except looking at where you were before?
Okay, just another curiosity question. So, and I've been reading a lot lately in both geopolitics and economics. I've really been interested in those two topics. And I realize history means something different to me now than it did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's like reading any great book. And oftentimes as an entrepreneur, we're so busy creating a new future, we don't pay attention to the past or from history. And that can be great in the sense that sometimes we're not bound to old thinking and old rules, so we invent new ones and solve new problems. But other times we're bound to solve the same problem that's already been solved before just because we're ignorant. So where does wisdom and history and knowledge fit into your mapping of capabilities?
Yeah, well,
I'm a big reader.
Yeah, well, I think that one thing, I don't care what human activity you're talking about and who's doing it, that there isn't any real sustainable progress without constant measurement. Okay, and so I'm really very vigilant about recording my successes. And usually there are things that are provable. In other words, they're actually out in the open measurements, and and it's numbers or events. That last year you had 5 events like this, and this year you have 10 events like that. And that's very, very significant to me. And it's we have a whole series of numbers which tell our overall team that we're doing really well, and then specific teams that they're really doing well. And I'm a big I'm very, very insistent that everybody knows the numbers, because otherwise you're kind of making it up that you're doing better. But if you don't have previous numbers to measure your new numbers by, I think you spend a lot of your energy giving yourself positive affirmations that don't really relate to actual results. They don't really relate to actual performance and results. And you were part of our community with the Lifetime Extender, and one of the first things about getting a handle on your health is get checked up with real measurements every quarter at a minimum, and don't die from surprise.
Yeah. Yep.
No. I mean, we were discussing just before we came on about a particular test that revealed a particular thing, not dangerous, but useful to know early. Yep. And I think about that. But I was talking to or watching Peter Zion, who's a favorite geopolitics expert, and he was saying that President Xi of China is so cut off that in 1991, for a period of 3 months, they had sweeping blackouts all across China, but not in Beijing. And it was 3 months after these blackouts that President Xi learned that they had actually happened.
Wow.
And the reason is it's bad news.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very chancy thing telling President Xi about bad news. And I find that that's on a global level, and that's at a country of over 1 billion people. But I find individuals on their own, and when we first started discussing the lifetime extender and the testing that's now available, which is, quite frankly, it's revolutionary compared to 3 years ago. What's available now compared with 3 years ago is really quite extraordinary. And, technology is playing a very central part in the ability for individuals to get really fit, know that they're fit, and stay fit. And it was really funny. And I was talking to some of my team members, and they say, all this testing that you and Babs get, I probably get 10 significant in-depth tests a year because we're in different programs, and that's part of membership in different programs, and for different reasons we are. And we've discovered lots of things, and mostly plus, but some minus. And we're able to take immediate counteractive measures for the ones that are deficient or low or whatever the test proves. And the team members would say, well, I wouldn't really want to know about those things. I really wouldn't want to know. If it was bad results, I wouldn't want to know about it. And I said, well, the fortunate thing is you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to know it now, but I can guarantee you if it's trending in the wrong direction, I can guarantee you, don't you worry about missing it now, because you won't miss it later.
That'll be a turd wrapped in frosting called regret.
Yeah.
And that's,
And then there's all this grief and sadness about, isn't this awful? And I remember I had prostate cancer. You had your own version of cancer.
Little colorectal. Yep.
Yeah. And at a certain point. And, I remember I was being driven in one of my limousine company, and the driver was talking about how he was a cancer survivor, and that he had created an organization, and he's part of the leadership of this organization called Cancer Survivors. And so I told him, well, I had prostate cancer in 2016, and he said, you did? He says, wow. He says, so you're a survivor? And I said, no. I was simply someone who took a test that showed that something was out of whack, and surgery was required, and I chose surgery. And 30 days after my surgery, I was fully back to work, and it's got some effects afterwards that were different from my experience before, but I said, everything's good. But he said, man, you should come and talk about how you survived. I said, I didn't survive. I just get checked up all the time. And we caught it in the first 6 months. I said, I didn't survive anything. I just, I went and got tested, and the test showed me something that needed to get corrected. And I'm in my 70s, and this sort of thing apparently happens a lot to men in their 70s. So I said, I don't feel particularly special because I had this experience, but I do feel grateful that I get checked up all the time.
So that's so I'm just thinking through the lens of making.
Yeah, but going back to
Well, it's sort of like number 5 I have is constantly measuring progress. And it seems, just based on that, is, if I were going to create a number 6, it's you're never being victim to a negative test or negative news. Seems like an appropriate one. Would that, do you agree with that?
I think that bad news and good news are just information.
Mm-hmm.
How you respond to them tells you whether it's a good experience or a bad experience. I mean, we were like you and so many entrepreneurs who are in the personal coaching business or the group coaching business or the consulting. Our entire business was totally dependent on large numbers of people traveling to have workshops with us. And in one 7-day period in March of 2020, the entire basis of our revenues and our livelihood was taken away from us. So that was news. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me 12 hours to get on track, and our whole team got on track, both running the company and getting paid by our customers. We had to switch really, really fast. And it was very exciting, actually. I found it very exhilarating,
So what I'm going to blend that one into is, being able to take massive action immediately based upon, we'll call it negative information, but instead of, whether it is. And I think connecting with the Zoom, although you made a fast decision, I know, and I don't remember if it was you talking about this at the event we had it in Florida. We were just at a week or two ago. But if it wasn't you, I really, really got clear on something that I think is important, which is the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones who are willing to experiment and iterate and see that as an absolutely necessary part of their success. And so, for example, I think one of the reasons why Elon Musk has been so successful, both with Tesla and with SpaceX, is he's outright said, we're going to blow up a lot of rockets, a lot of really expensive rockets. But every time one blows up, we learn a lot. Because of that, when you look at the number of rockets that they launch per year compared to NASA, on one hand, you can say, well,
to the rest of the world, for that matter.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. And what he's done for private space travel. But also, when you look at the self-driving Tesla, they literally have billions of trips of data, of visual data. And it's one of the reasons why when Tesla releases its robot, they're going to have an unimaginable amount of data. It's the intelligence, the learning that has the value, more so than the servos and the movement, because a lot of those problems have been solved, and some of the problems that haven't been solved yet have more to do with current and power, and storage and batteries, which will solve themselves fairly quickly. But the fact that you're going to have these really, really, really intelligent machines right out of the chute, because they're able to use that data, much like what Tesla or what SpaceX is able to do, is not only launch all these rockets, do it with a lot of government contracts and a lot of government money, which de-risked them, and launch all these Starlink satellites. So it's sort of like they, as long as these things are working, might as well put something up in space, which is a residual monthly recurring income for a service that solves huge problems worldwide. So again, I'm just trying to connect the dots here. I want to get your feedback, but it's not just taking massive action. It's experimentation and iteration, and then being able to monetize while you experiment and iterate as well.
Yeah. And I think there's a number of what I would call hidden capabilities related to that. In other words, they're visible. And one of them is don't take opposition personally. Opposition is just opposition. It's something you haven't solved yet. Okay. And don't. And I think he's got a fair amount of that, in relationship to many other who are described as being at a same level as he is. I think he's really different in kind than most of the tech entrepreneurs who basically are one-trick ponies, but it just turned out to be a big horse. In other words, if you look at Microsoft, first of all, there was a couple observations that Bill Gates and his team made. One is that the future was in software, not hardware. Okay. And they got IBM to basically give them the software component of IBM for free. And the other thing was that software would not be big and personal computers wouldn't be big unless you could bypass the problem of people having to learn how to program.
Yeah.
With graphic user interface, which wasn't his, it was not his innovation. It was not Steve Jobs' innovation. It took place in the Xerox experimental lab in Palo Alto Park.
Alan Kay in the park. Yeah.
Yeah. And Xerox would have done nothing with it. So better that it should be borrowed by innovators who would actually do something with it. But that was the great breakthrough. And once you get to Windows, which has never been equal to iOS, I don't see anything else that that particular person has done. Is there anything that he's done in the last 35 years that equals what he did with Windows? I don't really know if there was any innovation or anything.
Yeah, I think Bill Gates proved that from the beginning. He stole IP and repackaged it and sold it in a really unique way. But he stole and stole and stole. Yeah. I mean, MS-DOS was basically stolen, and he screwed his partners. He screwed IBM, and then he stole from Steve Jobs, and he lied. I mean, basically, I think it's fair to say on a lot of levels, he's a predator, a sociopath, and I never really liked the guy personally.
And there's room for that in the great American system. There's room for individuals like that.
I'm not. At the end of the day,
they can be put to good use. Can't
throw away the bowl, the cracked bowl, if the fruit's good inside. So a lot's come out of developing in the platform. But
And James Madison, he said, if men were angels, we wouldn't need government. But they're not angels, and so he said, let's go to the other end of the spectrum and say they have lots of vices. And let's see if we can just use vices to personal vice and personal self-interest to serve the public good. Can we create a system? And and I don't think there's any other system that could have accommodated people like Bill Gates. In other words, it had to be, Elon Musk, is mostly as a child, it was South Africa. Well, he wouldn't, Elon Musk wouldn't be Elon Musk in South Africa. He had to come to the United States, And I would say the other thing is, about entrepreneurialism, you're saying, be lucky where you grow up. Be lucky where you grow up and when you grow up. I think timing and place plays a big part in the success of entrepreneurs. You and I would not exist 50 years ago as entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. Really, you think so? Like what do you think would have happened?
Not like we are today.
That's true. Yeah.
No, we were born at a good time. I mean, I'm older than you, but not. We're more of a generation together than we are compared to a lot of other entrepreneurs. I mean, we're more or less in an early thing. So I think knowing how to take advantage of luck is a very, very important part of being an entrepreneur. I think 50% of how you turn out in life is luck. And I think the other 50% is having a skill in taking advantage of luck. Because a lot of people have good luck, but they don't know how to take advantage of it. Some people have bad luck and they know how to flip it.
Yeah. Okay. So
like Jack Ma is lucky where he became successful. He's very, very unlucky in where he became successful.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never I've listened to the guy before. He sounds like a complete dolt to me. Did you ever see the interview it was him and Elon Musk? And it was like, I swear it was like listening to a hamster speak to a god. And everything that came out of Jack Ma's mouth was at best rodent talk. It was so idiotic. It was unimaginable. But that's what I remember about it anyway. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I remember, but I just remember being appalled by just there was nothing coming out of the guy's mouth. Maybe it was a bad day. I don't know. Maybe it was right before he got pulled in for his entrepreneurial beating from the party.
CCP.
Hey, this is Mike Koenigs. Sorry to interrupt the podcast, but if you're an action taker and ready to transform and reinvent yourself and your business, go to connect2mike.com to learn more and book a conversation with me right now. All right, back to the episode. All right, well, I'm gonna read the ones we have here, and I want to see because I've got 9 so far.
Oh wow,
there's a 10th. Yeah. So I have number 1 is clarity of identity and understanding that entrepreneurialism will be your life. The second one is just being able to create value. The third is the freedom to versus the freedom from mindset. Everything's about greater progress, and it's not about childhood trauma. It's not about repairing pain. Number 4 is giving up comparison, which is very related to The Gap and the Gain for anyone who hasn't read that book. Get it right now. Number 5 is constantly measuring progress, which comes in a variety of forms, whether it's numbers or events, quarterly. And the next one, number 6, is never a victim to negative test or negative news. It's only information, and to not take opposition personally, just doing something about it. Number 7, we put taking massive action. That's experimentation and iteration. And then number 8 is the ability to monetize the idea and realize value. That's really, we have creating value from number 2. So if there's a crossover, it's that one. Number 9, we have knowing how to take advantage of luck, knowing and being lucky where you grow up. I think that really is interesting because you're right. Jack Ma, he did it in China and then it ended up being an unlucky place. He still did something lucky.
Yeah. And
the question is whether he'll ever get out alive or be able to take his toys with him. He can't take a sandbox with him, but maybe his toys.
Yeah. And, there's no question that with you having the right mindset and the right approach and skills, that there's nothing that compares with being born in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, I mean, about 5 or 6 hours of Peter Zion on YouTube will tell you everything you need to know about probably the next 50 years of the planet, And I'll add to that. George Friedman's most recent books have been pretty good. And I agree. I think for any listener or viewer, definitely Peter Zeihan or Zeihan, Zeihan. It's actually pronounced like Zion National Park. Actually. Zion. Oh, okay. I asked him. Good. Joe had him as a all-day guest at the Genius, so I said this name that starts with a Z in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
How do you pronounce it? And he said, Zion National Park. He said, just think of Zion National Park, and that's how it's pronounced. So it's Peter Zion. Yeah.
Well,
And
just,
yeah.
go ahead.
But his big thing is the very, very, I guess, predicting that Russia is very quickly going down the drain is not such a bold prediction, but that China will not exist in its present form 10 years from now. That's pretty bold. I mean, there's a lot of people today who haven't in any way been informed that China is in deep, deep doo-doo as a country in any number of ways that you want to describe, and that their very belligerent behavior recently is covering up, weakness. It's covering up a tremendous weakness. And there, I always say there was a guy at Genius. I don't know if you remember him. It was at the Joe wasn't there, so it was at the November.
Yes.
Would have been the annual one, and he talked about China, how China is this and China is that. And I said, when I said to him, I said, when President Xi is not sleeping well at night, he's not thinking about the United States. He's thinking about all the people who hate him that live within 10 miles of him. That's who he's thinking about.
Yeah.
The perimeter starts about 50 feet outside of where he's sleeping.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, no. And the thing that'll do it is food. I mean, just have people really hungry, and they get grumpy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and we
have a number 10. We've got to get a number 10 because
we got to do one. And I just have two little add-ons to the references besides Peter Zeihan and George Friedman. I have been immersing myself lately in couple books by a guy named Seyfedian Amos. He's actually raised in Palestine. He is a Austrian economist who just shreds Keynesian economic principles for a variety of reasons. And he wrote a book called The Fiat Standard, and the subtitle is The Debt Slavery Alternative to Human Civilization. Ultimately, this guy is a big proponent of Bitcoin and creates a very, very compelling argument for and why fiat has been basically it powers war, it powers a misery economy, and it's quite fascinating. And there's another guy worth checking out, Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy. He's one of the first corporates, really the first to put a lot of money into Bitcoin. And people who are either not bullish on Bitcoin or listen to Buffett and Munger talk about how it's the worst scourge ever. The only reason I bring this up is because from an economic point of view, one of the things that I see in common with entrepreneurs is the willingness to constantly invent and reinvent and use and accept new technologies and tools, which is very, very American. It's what makes America strong and great long-term, is our ability to constantly create and recreate. It's Friedman and Peter, I think, both talk about the fact that in America, we are a technology. We've invented more technology than certainly any other culture on the planet. But anyway, that was my long-winded way of arriving at a possible 10th. But
I think the and I would say that it probably relates to who, not how. That and technology. I have a lot of who's who bring me the benefits of technology without me having to understand the technology.
Yeah.
And I'm writing a book right now called one of my quarterly books called "You Are Not a Computer," and it's actually about who you actually are as a human being, where technology, computers can actually be a great assistance, but to the person who doesn't know who they are, technology is not a solution.
Mm-hmm. So, so what should we make number 10 then with all that? Because now I'm trying to decide how to best phrase
you're trying to avoid 11. That's what you're trying to do.
Well, that's part of me was like, we could have a bonus.
I think we should. I think we should be disciplined here and
all right.
Force something out.
Okay.
There's one of the existing 9 that isn't up to.
Oh yeah. Well, we can do the whole ability to monetize the idea and realize value.
I think the value creation, monetizing great value creation.
Yeah.
Would really be, yeah. I think that's a big thing because you've come across many great ideas that didn't get monetized.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Actually, I think
so that gave us room for an extra then that we got rid of 1. So now we've got the 2.
Yeah. And
keep going.
I think this is thing. It's about your whole life, not just one aspect of your life. Entrepreneurship is about your whole life. It's how you live, what your personal life is like and everything like that. And I mean, Elon Musk will tell you that's where he's been a failure, is that he doesn't have any personal life. And he's got 7 kids, but he doesn't have any personal life. And and my sense is that he's feeling that now. He's talked about it more. And I think that's why he's decided to be a hero in the political realm, not just the technological realm. I mean, he knows the government people who've helped him up until now.
Yeah.
But I think he's looking further afield for the government people who will be on his side. After November and after 2024. And I think he really knows how to position himself. I will say this.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, he is so fast.
And but my feeling is that he's getting an idea now that his positioning has to be more than just the neatest new thing that he's created. As far as I can see, he's come down. He actually said it. He said, the party I used to belong to doesn't include me anymore.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. And everybody went crazy, which proved his point.
Yeah. Then the Me Too, he kind of got Me Too'd there with something popped up literally within 24 hours, which he said, here's what's going to happen. So either he predicted that happening and flipped sides to ease the pain. Who knows? But you're right. Well, I want to go back up to this whole idea. So the 9th I turned into the creating, inventing, and using new technologies, and also just dropping in gaining leverage to know who's to keep you informed on new technologies. I think those are two. They're combined. And the last one has to do with this. One aspect of your life as an entrepreneur in your whole life. So how would you best phrase that if we were going to make that the 10th?
Well, I think it's have a 360-degree view of what entrepreneurial success means.
And in your book, that would mean it's balanced.
Well, you have a great life outside of work. You have a great life outside of work, and not that it appears in Architectural Digest or anything else, but it suits you. In other words, your life outside of work really suits you, and it's your life outside of work is as energizing as your life inside of work.
I love it. I love it. Well, that gives us 10. So I think we can.
That's
we
really
can
interesting. I mean, that's a lot of territory that I hadn't explored before. So I've learned something from this.
Yeah. It's been a good exercise. I think,
but I think entrepreneurism is rather recent in human affairs, and my thesis is that it didn't happen until 1776. Okay, and not because of the American Declaration of Independence, which was written in that year, or the book The Wealth of Nations, which was written in that year. But that's the year that you have the first really productive, efficient steam engine in Great Britain. And it was the emergence of steam power that suddenly gave a new kind of multiplier in the world that just multiplied entrepreneurism very quickly, to such a point that they became a class unto themselves that had never existed before. And what I mean is that for the first time, you could actually get rich honestly. You could come from nowhere and get rich honestly, just by taking advantage of this new productive power of steam engines. And up until that time, you really had to be well connected, or you had to be great at stealing things to become really rich. I
want to explore that deeper. That'll be okay. Well, I think we can officially wrap this one up. So I have officially called this, at least for now, the top 10 capabilities, and really they're mindsets of a successful entrepreneur. They really are mindsets just as much as capabilities, and they're documented. So for you listening, watching, you can hit the link and download these, because they're all documented along with the transcript of the show, and links to the books and references and videos that we talked about as well. And Dan, really interesting. This is a lot of fun. I like creating top 10s with you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind doing this again. So,
and
go ahead.
And we did it by missing 10 others.
Not too bad. Not too bad. Nothing better than making shite up. So, all right. Well, there you go. This episode of Capability Amplifier. Look forward to seeing you or watching you in another one soon. And make sure you leave some comments for us. We always read them. All right. Thanks for listening and watching.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.